This is Robert Fisher with the Willard Grant Conspiracy, and you're listening to the 20th year of Retrospectives on 3SER Radio in Melbourne. Congratulations, John, and all who sail with you.
As a young man growing up and getting into music, was there a uniform quality amongst the various artists and musicians that inspired you?
No, I think exactly the opposite, probably. I mean, I grew up in California, and, I guess all my teenage years were pretty much in the, middle, late 60s into the 70s, so it's sort of... actually, I guess preteen and teenage, but I was listening to music all that time. So yeah, I mean, in California, everything was available, and I listened to pretty much all of it. So, and then when I moved to Boston, Boston had an amazing music scene, and oddly, a lot of the I've discovered this recently. A lot of the stores there were carrying all these great, sort of small labels and things like that, including a lot of Australian labels like Hot, and so we were able to get stuff from the Triffids and Laughing Clowns and things like that, where I don't think many other people in this country were able to get that.
Tell us about some of the bands you were involved with before Willard Grant. Was there any musical resemblance to the music that you've been making over the past decade?
I think so. I mean, none of the bands that I was in were known by anybody, so it really doesn't mean a lot to talk about the band specifically. There's no records to be found or anything like that. But I guess there's always been a real focus in the music that we make on lyrics and sort of the song itself. I think even in the early days when Paul and I had really big electric bands, we were very interested in making sure that the content of the music matched the intensity of it, and whether that means you could make that work whether you've got two electric guitars, bass, and drums, and you're playing at extreme volume, or you can make that work whether if you're just sitting with a guitar in your lap. But we try to make the music have a quality that resonates beyond the surface, and I think that's always been true of all the bands that we've had. So, and even after Paul has left the band, I think that in the last few years, that's always been my interest at any rate. It's part of what I try to do.
Now, the band virtually happened by accident, did it? It's a story I'm sure you've told many times before, though. Yeah, it wasn't exactly by accident, but kind of. I mean, we had this big electric band called the Flower Tamers at the time, and the drummer in that band is a guy named Malcolm Travis, who also plays in Willard Grant as well occasionally still, though he lives in Rhode Island. And he also was in a band called Sugar, which was Bob Mould's band at the time. Yeah. And they had just released File Under Easy Listening, so they were doing pretty much a world tour. And so Malcolm was away a lot, and because of that, we didn't want to just replace him on drums. So we kind of put the project as, the band on hold, and sort of decided that in order to keep us entertained musically, we would just sort of invite people over to the house once every week and sit around and play whatever new songs everybody had. And that's kind of the origins of it, sort of a living room session. And then at one point, one of the guitar players in the band, Dana Hollowell, he had built a studio, and he asked us to help test the studio out before he brought bands into it. And it was out at his house in Concord, Massachusetts. Actually, the line between Sudbury and Concord, though that's minutiae. But anyway, so we went out there on a weekend, and in the process of testing the studio gear, we recorded 7 songs. And they were all kind of from these living room sessions that we had been doing. And so when we listened to them, we were sort of shocked at how interesting it was, and felt like, we should finish it, and we did, and ended up with an album that we didn't know what to do with it, so we had to, come up with a name and actually, decide whether to put it out or not. So it was sort of accidental, or I guess you could say organic. It just sort of happened more than, it wasn't like a plan that anyone had. No one sat down and said, "Oh, we're going to start this band and do it this way." So
yeah, must have been a strange feeling though to have all that happen after struggling away for so many years with other bands, with the intent of trying to make something happen.
Well, in a weird way, I sort of think that it makes sense. I don't know, in some strange karma-like way. It kind of makes sense that when you stop trying, it works.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a lesson for a lot of people, or at least you stop trying. You stop trying to do things that don't pay dividends, and you continue to make an effort, but you make the effort on the right things, on whatever that takes, and stop trying to chase a brass ring that may or may not make you happy. I recently did a songwriters workshop in England, and one of the questions they asked was, what is your advice to young songwriters or people who want to be songwriters? And I think, make a commitment is the first one. And the second thing I said was, fall in love with the process and not the product, because the product is something that will come from the process. And once it becomes a song or a recording or whatever, it's not yours anymore. So fall in love with the thing that you have something to do with and that, makes you happy. And leave the rest of it, to where it's supposed to be, which is partly luck and partly, effort and all the rest. So I don't know if that makes any sense at all.
No, it does.
I think I'm just rambling.
I've read critics and reviewers place many types of labels on the band. I've seen it described as alternative country. I've seen it described as gothic folk and punk folk. How would you describe the band to the uninitiated?
I kind of describe it as garage folk.
Garage folk.
I mean, it's like, it's all those labels are kind of ridiculous. The minute you say country, even if you preface it with alternative, half the room runs out and hides their head. So, and there is really nothing country about what we do. Yes, we use acoustic instruments, but that doesn't make it country music. It's kind of, to call what we do country is sort of an insult to country musicians who have worked their whole careers and their entire lives to be able to play that kind of music. So I think garage. A friend of mine actually calls it psychedelic garage folk, and I think that's actually a pretty good term for it.
When Paul was with the band, how did the collaborative process work between the two of you? Was there a set procedure you went through?
Not really. We'd worked together for such a long time that it was almost like second nature, really. Sometimes I would write both lyric and music and bring it to him, and then he would, fix my music, that kind of thing. Or sometimes, he'd just be playing a riff or something, and I'd jump in with words, and then we, arrange it from there. It was always different. There was never one way that things happened. And when you write with somebody for over 10 years, it becomes it's almost chemistry. It's not even it's not like you really have to make an effort. You have to make an effort to sit down and do it, but you don't have to create a construct in order to be able to do it.
When he left, though, did it force you in any way to reassess your approach to the music and the songwriting?
Well, actually, not. Yeah, in some very positive ways. I had to make a decision about what to do about the acoustic guitar in the band, and that forced me to play the acoustic guitar, which was something that I hadn't done. I played it a little bit, but it wasn't something I played in concert or live, or really worried about whether I was good enough to play with a bunch of other musicians and not embarrass them. So I had to kind of bone up a lot, really work hard at it for a while. That was one thing, which was good for me. The other thing is that I sort of took the opportunity not to make the acoustic guitar the center of everything. It was really easy when Paul was in the band because he plays such a strong rhythmic guitar that it was really easy to just sort of make that the center of everything and allow all the different people that collaborate in this band to sort of drape themselves on that as a strong structure. But I kind of wanted to open it up a little bit after having done as many records as we'd done at that point. I sort of wanted to open the center of the music up, so that allowed me to do that as well, and that's been really fun to do.
Now, your records have never been short of critical acclaim, but I guess as you would know, critical acclaim doesn't pay the bills. How frustrating can that be at times, being such a well-kept secret in music?
I don't know how to answer those kinds of questions, I mean, it's certainly not for lack of trying. I mean, we've had some very good labels. Ryko Disc and Slow River were our first labels, and our first 3 records were released in Australia, for example, through Festival, and I think all of these people have something to answer for when you ask that question. It's sort of a hard thing. It mystifies me, that it seems like there are a lot of people out there who would be inclined to like what we do, who for some reason have just never heard it. And I think, at this point, we may be one of those bands where people have heard the name more than they've actually heard the music. Mm-hmm. And that means that people are sort of like, oh yeah, that band, but they've never actually taken the time to listen to what we do, and it might surprise them if they did. I mean, that's the only answer I have to it. I don't really understand it. We work incredibly hard, and we play lots of shows, and I just from the response of the people at those shows and everything else, I would venture to say that we play good shows. So, by the nature of it, you would think that word of mouth, if nothing else, would work in our favor. But I don't know. If I knew, I would fix it.
You're not alone, though. There are many other bands, I'm sure, in the same situation.
That's very true.
Yeah.
It's very, very true.
One thing I've always admired about your music is the diversity of the instrumentation that you use. It never gives the impression that it's being done just for the sake of it. Do you approach each song in the studio with a completely open mind as to what instruments will be used?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I have a pretty good idea about what I want on each track before I get there. But I am also, I have learned that I am not always the best decision maker either. So I'm always open to ideas, and I leave room for the possibility in the studio that we'll have some sort of accident where somebody will, very much like it's on stage, somebody will play something that we've never heard before, and it may sound right, and we may need to explore it. So I like to go in with a good plan because I think that's smart, especially when you're paying for studio time on your own. But I also like to leave room for the happy accident and the improvisation. It's very much like the live version of the band. Every time we play the songs, you're going to hear songs that you've heard before, but you'll never hear them exactly the same way twice, I think, because even if it's just me by myself doing the songs, I tend to sort of let the moment dictate how things get played to a certain extent, and there's an improvisational element in everything that we do.
You do have this unique arrangement in the band, that kind of, I guess you could call it a floating membership of musicians. Does it have any?
That's a really good way to put it. Yeah.
Does it have a disadvantage at all?
Yes. I think it's part of maybe the reason why people have a hard time kind of getting their head around what we do. This is kind of a McDonald's world, and people like to think that they can get the same hamburger from McDonald's, whether it's in Hong Kong or Perth or Boston, and people like that familiarity. They like to think that, oh, I'm going to go see this thing that I've seen before, and I'm comfortable with that. What we do is predicated on the notion that music lives in the moment. It should be there, and then it should live in your memory, and it shouldn't be. It's not something that's to be duplicated exactly over and over again. So I think maybe that has something to do with how difficult people find it is to sort of relate to the band as a band, and maybe that's part of the problem. The other disadvantage that it has is that people don't really consider us a band. They think of it as a project, and it's not like that at all. I mean, it's very much a band, even though it's got 39 members. I think all of them, feel as though they're connected to the band in whatever way they can commit to it, and I think that we're all in service of the music and the songs, so we all have a sort of a bond that transcends just the notion of a project.
But I guess on the other hand, it must also keep things interesting for you, because not only the audience aren't hearing the same songs the same way twice, you're in that situation too. So yeah.
Exactly, and well, that's the benefit. The benefit is that there's actually a number of benefits. The first is that you get to experience the joy of really making music every night, not just playing music, but making music every night, because every night somebody does something a little different that I've never heard before, and that's a truly joyous thing, and I hope it's that way. It is when I, as a fan, which is why I play music to begin with anyway, because as a fan, I was struck with the power of it and what a wondrous thing it was. So I'm hoping that for the same reason that I love that kind of that in the moment transient sort of creative spark, that the audience will also like that as well. And that's one of the benefits. The other great thing about it is that the idea of a rock and roll band with like 3 members or 4 members, and those are the members of the band. It's sort of it's I guess it's a sustainable concept if you're 18 and everybody's living in the same house or something. But the minute people start to get older and get families and all the rest of it, it starts to break down, and it's sort of an artificial construct that doesn't really benefit the making of music. So what we do and the way this band works is it allows people to participate in whatever way they can and to whatever degree they can. So just because somebody doesn't go on the road with us or doesn't always record with us, it doesn't make them any less committed to their participation in the music. And I think that's a much more realistic way of running a band, and it allows people a level of freedom that allows them to participate for years and years and years without feeling as though they can't say, I got to take a break. And there are people in the band that I've played with for 13 years. Actually, there's one member of the band, Tom King, who I've played with for almost 20 now in various different bands. So I think as a concept, it works to our benefit, in that the longevity of the musicians and everything, that creates a very special environment.
Can it be difficult logistically though in organising tours?
Yeah, a bit. I mean, but it's also positive, because the truth is that there can be any version of the band, everything from me sitting with a guitar to 2 people to 3 people to 7 to 8 to 10. So it gives us a flexibility that you wouldn't have if you were committed to it's the 4 of us and the 4 of us only.
Yeah.
So it makes it actually more flexible. That makes for kind of an interesting challenge, though, because there's sort of the notion of, how do you present this music, and what is the best way to present it, and what is the best way for the music, itself to be presented. And sometimes, the concept of economics versus artistic intent can be daunting. So, although there's flexibility there, it also frustrates me sometimes, because I know, for example, that it would be highly unlikely that I could come to Australia with 7 members of the band.
Yeah.
It does present some problems, just sort of dealing with the economic versus artistic thing, and though it makes it difficult, I also have been very lucky in that I've found a lot of people to play with in the places that I go, so I can augment a band pretty easily that way.
I get the impression you're very much a team player when it comes to making music, and you thrive on the collaborative process. Is that for you the best way to create? Do you need that, I guess, support around you to bring the best out of yourself?
Well, I think it's a good question. I mean, I think the answer to that is yes. I don't think that any one person can. I don't think you would have to be a pretty remarkable person to not find it valuable to have people who play instruments better than you do, around you. I think that it would require an enormous ego, of the wrong kind. I have a pretty good ego, but not the sort that would say, well, I know what's best in all circumstances. I just don't. It's never been important to me. I mean, I also don't look at this as a control thing, because I don't really look at in a very it's kind of hard to describe, but in a very odd way, I don't really look at the music as completely mine. I sort of think that the music is a bit of a gift, and so it's coming from a place that isn't always about my effort, and so sometimes a song arrives without me doing much of anything at all, and so I don't really have much trouble sharing the sort of spotlight, if you will, with a lot of different people. That's never really been an interest to me to do it otherwise.
How would you describe a typical Willard Grant Conspiracy fan?
That's really hard. I mean, you should see. I mean, I just got back from a 2-month European tour, and at any given show, there's everything from 17-year-old, guys and girls with piercings and whatever, to 50-year-old guys with beards and a ponytail. So, and everything in between. And I think that's healthy. I mean, I think that means that the music has like a resonance to it that transcends a whole lot of kind of crap that people like to put on labels. So I think that's actually good. I mean, I think it's the same sort of notion as I won't make the mistake of actually comparing us to this person, but I mean, it's the same sort of notion as the latter years of Johnny Cash's career, where all of a sudden it's like, okay, these are folk songs. They resonate beyond fashion. They're not subject to those kind of notions. And I think that's a very powerful place to be. Even if the audience is small, it's still a very powerful place to be.
Now, there was more of a rock and roll side to the band shown in Let It Roll. Was that a particular catalyst for you wanting to go that way? Was there a particular catalyst for you going that way?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've always done it, and I guess that's the catalyst. After a while, I got tired of people saying, what a surprise, they rocked. So I sort of decided that, I was gonna. I mean, I'd had this version of the band that I'd been touring in Europe with for about 2 years, and I decided that it was time to make a kind of live rock and roll album. Although, on Let It Roll, there are certainly things that are not, loud and aggressive. I mean, there's songs like Lady of the Snow Line and From a Distant Shore and things like that. But I've never been afraid of it. If you listen to our records, you'll hear it on everything, starting with the very, very first record, 3 a.m. There's a song called Bring It Down on there, which is pretty loud and aggressive. So I mean, and Mojave has Go Jimmy Go, and it goes on from there. So it's never really not been a part of what we do.
Yeah. Is there though a pet project for you in the mind that you still haven't managed to put down yet? A certain style of album that you'd want to go for?
Well, I don't really. No, not really. I don't have notions like that. I mean, actually, I just finished making a new record, which I'd been working on for a year and a half, and I knew I was going to make this record actually before we made Let It Roll, because Regard the End, I wanted to extend some of the ideas of Regard the End, and that didn't make sense for Let It Roll, so I knew I was going to do another record that had that kind of feel to it. So in the last year and a half, I've just been writing songs and working with a co-songwriter as well, Malcolm Lindsay, who is Scottish and lives in Glasgow. And we've been working on the record for a while, and we just finished it about a month and a half ago. So, but other than that, I mean, I don't know what the next thing will be. I have this notion that I want to get in and do some experimental stuff and just sort of see where that goes and play with some different ideas. I'm sure it'll reveal itself to me when it's ready. And I have faith in that, and I don't worry about it too much.
Tremendous. And what's coming up for you in the new year approaching?
Well, I think in the spring we'll release this new record. Unfortunately, I don't know whether it'll be released down there or not, but I know it'll be released in Europe and England. I'm not even sure it'll be released in America, to be honest. So I'm not, but I do know I'm going to do a handful of orchestra tours. The new record has got a lot of orchestral instruments used as an integral part of the songwriting, and so. I'm working right now on setting up a 7 or 8 major city European tour with multiple strings and horns and grand piano and all sorts of different elements, as well as the things that are normally found with the Willard Grant show. So I'm excited about that notion, and I'm not thinking too much beyond that at this point.
Fantastic. Well, Robert, thanks so much for taking time out to catch up.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time and you making the effort to give me a call.
Congratulations!
And I hope we make it down sometime soon. I'd really love to return. I had a great time when we were there the first time around. So
it will be fantastic, and hopefully I'll be in town this time when you're here, and I'd love to see the band. It'd be really good.
Well, knock on wood. Yeah, that'll be great. All right, take care of yourself.
Thanks a lot, Robert. Take care. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye.